Hi everybody, welcome to the Road to the Ranch recap show. I'm Sean Woodland with Annie Sakamoto. Phase 1 of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games is in the books, and it's been a unique year. These are kind of a unique set of circumstances that we're facing. These are games like no other. This is kind of a weird way, a unique way to start the CrossFit Games.
It is, but at least it was a way to start the CrossFit Games. And I think those of us that are fans of the sport are very appreciative that we had any form of CrossFit Games this year.
The way this worked is we had 4 competition windows that were 3 hours each. So all the athletes competed in their local time zones. Some of the windows opened at 9 a.m., some at noon. So they were all competing at different times around the world. They didn't know what they were doing. So let's take a look at window number 1. Featured 2 events. The first, Friendly Fran, which featured thrusters and chest bar pull-ups. The second event in that first window was the 1-rep max front squat. We'll start with the men, and when you have an event like this, I mean, Mat Fraser just dominates right out of the gate. He wins the event 3 minutes, 8 seconds. Some people would just like that as their regular Fran time.
Right, I mean, he was almost 50 seconds faster than the next athlete, who was Noah Olson, so not a slump himself. This is 126 movements in 188 seconds, which means that's about 1.5 seconds per rep, and that doesn't even count transitions from the barbell to the pull-up bar and back again.
Mat Fraser picked up right where he left off. Noah Olson did as well. He was the guy who pushed Fraser last year at the CrossFit Games. Olson takes second in event number 1, 3 minutes, 55 seconds.
Yeah, and I think that we saw from Noah Olson on his first event that last year was not a fluke. To be one of the only few people that went sub-4 on this event, he showed that he was back and that last year was just his way of saying, hey world, I'm really fit.
One guy we expected to do well right off the bat, and who has traditionally put himself in a hole at the CrossFit Games, and we thought maybe he would avoid that because this is a virtual competition, was Pat Vellner, but he put himself in an early hole. It wasn't huge, but he finished 16th in event 1, not what we expected to see.
Right, I mean, this is the guy that won the Open, won the Rogue Invitational, won Wadapalooza this year. 16th is a recoverable finish, but it's not the way that we thought he would start off this competition.
Here's where things stood after one event, and these are the results for event 1. So Mat Fraser picks up yet another CrossFit Games event victory. Noah Olson, he's right behind him in second place. Scott Tetlow with a solid performance as he ties Baden Brown out of Australia for third place at the time of 3:58, and then Jacob Hepner and Jeffrey Adler, guy who finished 5th in the Open, off to a strong start, as was Luke Schaefer, a former team competitor, and then Samuel Cornier, Jonakoski, and Bjorgvin Karl Gumundsson rounding out the top 10. Let's go over to the women's side now. Event number 1, and look, surprise, surprise, Tia Toomey doing what Tia Toomey does.
Right, not surprising that she won this event, but I love this. There's 2 Aussies on top at the end of this first event, and the other Aussie being Cara Saunders. She was back for the first time since she's had her baby. Really exciting to see her in competition. Both of these Australian ladies went sub-4 on this event. They were about 40 to 49 seconds faster than the next athlete, and the only 2 females to go sub-4.
They started as expected. Someone who didn't was Sarah Sigmundsdottir. She was a popular pick to be in the top 5 when this thing was all said and done. We talked about Vellner digging an early hole. Sarah was really far down the leaderboard, 27th out of 30th in this event with a time of 5:54.
Right, this was a tragic start to the 2020 Games for Sarah, and unfortunately it was somewhat reminiscent of last year's start to the Games. It was that kind of a hole. You're now looking at all top 5 finishes for the rest of the weekend if you want to qualify.
Event 1 results for the women. Tia Toomey, yet another event win. 3 minutes 40 seconds, beats Cara Saunders by 9 seconds. Brooke Wells off to a great start as she takes 3rd. Christine Best in 4th place. The youngster, Haley Adams, rounding out the top 5, and then some very familiar names after that, including Jamie Simmons, Emma McQuaid, and Kari Pearson. Melina Rodriguez out of Argentina. She also got off to a good start as well. Event number 2 couldn't be simpler. We're just going to give you 20 minutes. We're going to load up a barbell, and then you're going to go for your 1-rep max front squat. And on the men's side, this was an eye-popping number put up by Griffin Raleigh, 490 pounds.
And mind you, that's after 63 thrusters at 115 pounds, not that long before that. 490 pounds. I think most of these guys, well, most guys that I know would be happy to deadlift 490 pounds. He was 33 pounds heavier than the next competitor. And actually, if you go to any of his IG posts, you'll see he does things like clean 405 pounds right after a Metcon. So definitely, if you've been paying attention to Griffin Raleigh, I think a lot of people knew that this was a possibility. Griffin
Raleigh is very strong. Justin Medeiros, the youngster making his first CrossFit Games appearance, he was impressive in this event. He took third place, 437 for him.
Right, 437 pounds, good for third place as a rookie at the CrossFit Games. So not bad way to start off his 2020 games.
Jeffrey Adler, we also mentioned him. He was in the top 10. He was 6th place overall after one event. Continued to look really good. Another top 10 finish. He took 7th with a lift of 418 pounds.
Right, and this is his second year at the Games. He actually finished 33rd last year, and he was 5th on the first cut, which was the first event at the 2019 Games. Super impressive finish for me. You're always wondering how somebody's going to back up a year like that. 418 pounds, not a bad way to start.
Griffin Raleigh gets his first career CrossFit Games event victory with that lift of 490 pounds. The closest guy was Tyler Christoffel. He finished 2nd at 457. Then we had Justin Medeiros taking 3rd. Mat Fraser finishes up with a lift of 425 as he goes 1st and 4th in the first 2 events. Then Chandler Smith, 1 pound lighter than him. He will take 5th, 424 pounds. Baden Brown there in 6th place as well, so the youngster out of Australia. Here are the overall standings now after that first window, and it was Mat Fraser who was on top of the overall leaderboard thanks to that 1st and 4th place finish. Then Baden Brown, he took 2nd after those first 2 events. Griffin Raleigh, courtesy of that monster lift, followed by Justin Medeiros, and then Jeffrey Adler inside the top 5. Noah Olson wasn't that far out, just 11 points back. So plenty still needed to be decided after those first 2 events. Okay, let's go now over to the women's side of things. And Katrin Davidsdottir dug herself a hole because of this event.
Right, she only squatted 230
That's
pounds,
crazy. Not
which is really crazy for me. That was only good for 27th after her 12th place finish on Friendly Fran. That put her in 22nd place at this point in the competition, and definitely, like some of these other athletes we've mentioned, not where I expected to see Katrin at this stage of the comp.
She does have a history of making some comebacks, though. Meanwhile, Tia Toomey, she goes 2 for 2, 313 pounds. That was 11 pounds better than Laura Clifton, and not a shock that Toomey won this event either.
No, but really impressive because, again, these athletes don't know what the other athletes have squatted, and so this was very reminiscent to me of the Rogue Invitational, where she had no idea what the other athletes had lifted. Had she known, would she have stopped a little lighter than 313 pounds? Who knows, but the fact that she was able to do 313 pounds, super impressive, although not surprising.
Yeah, a couple of Australians doing really well in event number 2. Tia Toomey, she wins the event, another 100 points, perfect 2 for 2 for her. Laura Clifton finishes 2nd, her best finish of the competition. Then Cara Saunders takes 3rd, 294 pounds for her. Danny Spiegel, that was expected as she takes 4th, and then Amanda Barnhart rounding out top 5. Overall standings now for the women after 2 events and after that first window because of those 2 wins. Tia Toomey on top of the overall leaderboard with 200 points. Cara Saunders behind her by 12. Christine Best, she was in the top 5 early, followed by Brooke Wells and Christy Aramo O'Connell, with Melina Rodriguez out of Argentina looking good early, 12 points back. Jamie Simmons, Andrea Nisler, the former team competitor with OC3, was there as well, followed by Barnhart and Haley Adams. Let's go to events 3 and event 4. And we had Damn Diane, and this was a twist on the classic benchmark Diane, heavier deadlifts, deficit strict handstand push-ups. And then we had event 4, which was that just awful 1,000 meter row for time.
Right, exactly. And it was on that Damn Diane that I think Matt and Noah really set themselves apart from the rest of the pack. Matt with a 244, Noah with a 256. They were over 30 seconds faster than Yana Koski, who was right after them. So at this point, I think we see Matt and Noah really pulling away from the rest of the pack.
behind them, a couple guys who were looking to work their way up the leaderboard and did so with this event. You had Chandler Smith and Yona Koski, who put up solid scores to get themselves into contention.
Right. Chandler Smith moved himself from 10th to 8th place with a 6th place finish on this event. Great for Chandler Smith. And Yana moved from 12th into the qualifying spot of 4th place with a 3rd place finish on this event. So again, really good event finishes for both these gentlemen. They were doing what they needed to do to kind of move up the leaderboard and into qualifying position.
Over on the women's side with event number 3, as they kicked off the second competition window, this is where Tia Toomey and Brooke Wells really started to separate themselves from the pack.
Yeah, definitely. Tia wins the event to now have 300 perfect points at the start of competition. She is the first athlete to win the first 3 events at the CrossFit Games. That's never been done with a male or female individual athlete. And then Brooke Wells moves herself from 4th squarely into 2nd with 248 points. And that's where Brooke Wells would stay for the rest of the competition.
And a couple of women who were sort of flying under the radar at this point, but then really started to make their moves. Carrie Pierce, popular pick again to be in the top 5, and Kristen Holta, who you wouldn't be surprised if she was in the top 5 given her history and how people just tend to overlook her. But she wasn't grabbing a ton of attention, but sneaking up at this point.
But isn't that the way Kristen Holta always operates? And actually, Carrie Pierce is the same, I would say. She's not super flashy, but she is consistent enough. So Kristen Holta moved herself from 13th into 7th by getting 5th place in Damn Diane, which obviously put her in striking position for a qualifying position. And Carrie Pierce moved herself from 15th into the top 10 with a 4th place on this event. And we knew this would favor her. She did really well at this event. It was a great move by both veteran Games athletes.
Here are your results now for event 3, the third event of 7 for the women. Tia Toomey, as you heard Annie say, goes 3 for 3. She wins her 3rd straight event. First woman to ever win the first 3 events of the CrossFit Games. She does that by 3 seconds over Carol Ann Reason-Tebow. Brooke Wells, consistent throughout this entire competition. Another great finish for her. She takes 3rd. Then we mentioned Carrie Pierce and Kristen Holta and the work they did to start moving themselves into contention for a spot inside the top 5. Let's go now to event number 4, and this is another just simple test. Get on a rower, and you got to have a little bit of strategy here, but you got to go hard in a 1,000-meter row.
This to me looks like the absolute worst event of the weekend, just as far as pure pain. You can't stand at the rower and look at it and think about it for a second. Maybe you're going to chalk up. You're going to get on that thing and you got to pull your heart out for 3+ minutes right around there. That looked the worst.
Yeah, and on the men's side, a guy that we have been looking forward to seeing in competition at the Games level, finally got to see it, Roman Krenikov in Russia. He put up your winning time by 3 seconds over Con Porter, 2:48.9. That is a blistering pace he's holding on the rower.
It means he held a 1:24 pace for almost 3 minutes. And Krenikov really needed it at this point in the competition. He had a 19th, a 27th, and a 26th place finish. So nothing shy of an event win would dig him out of the hole that he had put himself into. And hey, let's face it, anytime you get an event win at the CrossFit Games is a good day.
A name that no one talked about coming into this event, this competition, was Samuel Kwant. He is a Games veteran. He's been there before, but no one talked about this guy. And at this point, 19th coming into this event, but this is where he starts to make a move.
Right. Up until now, we hadn't even thought about Kwant, like you said. His 3rd place finish in this row, though, moved him into 12th. And from here, we can watch him slowly creep up the leaderboard the rest of the weekend.
Here are your results for event 4, the 1,000-meter row for the men. Roman Krenikov picks up his first career CrossFit Games event victory with the time of 2 minutes, 48.9 seconds. Con Porter takes 2nd. Samuel Kwant, as you just saw, takes 3rd, and that's where he started his climb up the overall standings. Brent Fikowski, he needed that. He just never seemed to get things on track, though. A 5th place finish for him. And then Pat Vellner, who was in that early hole, takes 7th. So he was starting to move up the leaderboard as well. And Mat Fraser in 8th place. So not a typical Fraser finish, but that would be his worst event of the weekend. Let's go over now to the women's side of things. And you mentioned Roman Krenikov winning his first event. Karin Freyova on the women's side. first event win for her here.
Right, and it was a very similar situation to Roman Krenikov in that she was in 23rd going into this event. Not a great start, but she pulled a 3:15.8, and the world's best 1K row for women is a 3:04.9, so only about 11 seconds off of that world record. An event win, it was able to move her into 15th place, but again, probably not quite enough to get her out of the hole she had already put herself into.
Haley Adams had a really good showing at the games last year. Youngest female competitor in the field. We were really curious to see how she was going to handle this, and this is where Haley really said, "Hey, I'm here to stay. Like, do not count me out."
Well, and I love this. So Haley Adams pulled a 3:21.3, which she tied with two other athletes in this event, one of them being the oldest athlete in the competition, Samantha Briggs, and the other being the champion in Tia Toomey. So really impressive to tie either of those ladies. Not actually that surprising to me, though. You know, she's worked with Chris Hinshaw for years in aerobic capacity. To pull that fast is great, but again, she's been really working with Hinshaw for a few years now, so not too surprising.
Overall results for the women after event number 4, Karin Fryova, once again her first career event win, 3:15.8, about 2.5 seconds better than Amanda Barnhart. Danny Spiegel, she was making a charge at this point as well. She takes 3rd. Katrin Davidsdottir working her way out of that early hole. She takes 4th, and then Brooke Wells, just another top 5 finish, as she has a time of 3:21.3. Then 3 athletes tying for 6, including 2 former champions, Samantha Briggs and Tia Toomey, and Laurel Horvath would take 9th place. All right, window number 3 was next, and we had, once again, 2 events. We had Nasty Nancy, which was a spin on the classic benchmark Nasty. We added weight to the bar, but we added a little distance on the run, and then we threw some bar-facing burpees in there. And then event 6, a test we've never seen before. It couldn't be simpler. Let's get you a box 4x4 where you just put you in there. You have 20 minutes to see how long you can stay on your hands.
This was a real unknown test for all of us. You know, when we were looking at all of the events and we're thinking about the different athletes, yes, we had 1 or 2 people picked out to do well in this event, but you didn't know who was going to really bonk it or who was going to actually do okay.
And we mentioned Katrin Davidsdottir on the women's side, how she started in that early hole, started to make a charge, and this is where Katrin did Katrin stuff. I mean, she goes back to back on 5 and 6, wins both events.
Right. I mean, this is the true sign of a past champion, right? She comes into the day in 8th place after kind of a precarious start with events 1 and 2. But as a former champ, she knows exactly what she needs to do. She needs to win the next 2 events, and that's exactly what she did. I mean, that's a tall order for anybody when you consider the competition that she's going up against. But event win on both 5 and event 6 moves her from 8th into 3rd place.
Kristen Holta did not make as big a jump of that, but she came into Nasty Nancy 9th place overall. She finishes 2nd in that event, and that bumped her up to 7th, and now she's within striking distance of the top 5.
Right, and we've had talked about this with BKG, right? That they don't need to win all the events, but they need to capitalize on the events that suit them. And Kristen Holta did exactly this on both Nasty Nancy and on the handstand hold. Like you said, Sean, she gets 2nd on that event and moves herself into 7th, striking distance.
Overall results for event 5 for the women. Nasty Nancy, Katrin Davidsdottir, 100 points in the event win, 18-16, beats Holta by 7 seconds. Tia Toomey in the top 3, again, 18-26, just 3 seconds back of Holta. Haley Adams continued to look really impressive at this point of the competition as she took 4th, and then another top 5 finish for Brooke Wells as she was one of the most consistent athletes throughout the entire competition. That takes us to how long you can stand on your hands inside a 4x4 box. Unique situation. We looked at people, I think, who had gymnastics experience to do well here. And when you think about how good Katrin Davidsdottir is on her hands, it's not shocking that she went out and won this event too.
Right, there were 2 ladies that we had our eyes on, right? One of them being Katrin Davidsdottir, the other being Kari Pierce. Katrin had a near 3-minute freestanding handstand hold, 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Kari Pierce had a 2:13. That pulled Katrin into 3rd place and was able to pull Kari Pierce from 10th into 7th place.
Here are your event results now for event 6, and this is where Katrin Davidsdottir really made her move, as you heard Annie say, 2:54, just blowing away the competition. Kari Pierce needed that 2nd place finish by 1 second over Danielle Brandon. Haley Adams, 4th in that event. And then Melina Rodriguez shows back up in the top 5 as she ties Haley Adams. Kristen Holta keeps her hopes of getting into the top 5 alive by taking 7th place. And Brooke Wells drops out of the top 5 for the first time in, I think, the entire competition as she takes 8th place overall. But again, inside the top 10 throughout the entire competition for Brooke Wells, that is going to get you inside the top 5. Overall standings for the women now. After 6 events, with 1 event to go, and it was close for that 5th and final spot. Toomey and Wells looked relatively safe at this point, as did Katrin Davidsdottir. The 3 of them just looking to avoid a disaster. Haley Adams had a little more work to do, but Kristen Holta, look at who was chasing her. Amanda Barnhart just 7 points back. Carrie Pierce 10 points back, and Cara Saunders had an outside shot, but she was going to probably have to win the final event and get a lot of help in the process to make it. Over on the men's side, we go into Nasty Nancy, and once again, it was the Mat Fraser show, 1750 on that event. He was the only athlete to go sub 18.
Smoking pace from Mat Fraser. Again, not surprising, but it was his 3rd event win of the weekend and his 18th event win of his career. As if he needed another feather to put in his cap, but now, well ahead of anybody else with the most career event wins at the CrossFit Games.
Now, we mentioned Jeffrey Adler earlier, the athlete out of Canada who finished 5th overall in the Worldwide Open. A lot of eyes on him to see if he could duplicate that performance. Coming into that Nasty Nancy event, he was 4th overall. He takes 6th, and he really started to solidify a hold on a spot inside the top 5 at that point.
And really impressive, right? Because he's sitting in 4th going into this event, but he's got a lot of Games veterans kind of breathing down his neck. That 6th place finish, like you said, moved him into 3rd, and he had a little bit of breathing room at that point with only 2 events to go.
So Mat Fraser puts himself back in the win column as he wins with a time of 1750. Once again, the only athlete to go sub 18. Justin Medeiros, the CrossFit Games rookie, the 21-year-old, the youngest man in the field. He finishes 2nd at 18:19. Then Chandler Smith, trying to get himself into the top 5 with a 3rd place finish. Roman Krennikov back inside the top 5. And Bjorn Carl Gudmundsson, who was trying to dig himself out of an early hole and get in contention, helped his cause with that 5th place finish overall. We mentioned Jeffrey Adler. Noah Olson was looking pretty solid at this point, so that 7th place finish was just fine for him. Let's go now into event number 6. For the men, the handstand hold. Noah and Matt going 1 and 2 once again.
Right. Noah with a 137 on the handstand, Matt with a 135. So just 2 seconds separate them. But at this point, they are, like you said, Sean, separating themselves from the rest of the pack and basically solidifying those number 1 and number 2 positions.
Samuel Quant, after Nasty Nancy, had moved up to 7th overall, so still not inside the top 5, but creeping up, and this event put him inside the top 5.
Right, he's just 3 seconds behind Mat Fraser on this event, which was good for 3rd in the event, moves him into 4th place overall. Like I said, we were starting to see this slow creep from Samuel Quant, and now he's kind of solidifying his spot in the top 5.
Olson and Fraser, they go 1 and 2 again. This time it's Olson who gets the event win by 2 seconds over Mat Fraser. So Olson picks up 100 points and really puts a stranglehold on that 2nd place in the overall leaderboard. Mat Fraser's running away with the competition at this point. Samuel Quant with that 3rd place finish at 132. That was huge for him. And Jona Koski in 4th place at that point moved himself on the cut line, and he was the guy who would have the target on his back heading into the final events. The overall standings for men after 6 events, Fraser and Olson basically safe. Justin Medeiros was looking really good as well. Samuel Quant, though, he was far from safe. And then Jona Koski and Chandler Smith were tied with 358 points, but Koski got the tiebreak because he had a better event finish. Jeffrey Adler was also in contention, and Bjorn Carl Gudmundsson worked his way back into at least a spot that could give him a chance of possibly getting into the top 5. And Patrick Vellner was making a run, but was just kind of running out of time. He was 23 points back, and that was going to be hard to make up here in this 7th and final event. So let's go to the 7th and final event. And this was a spin on your workout, double unders and sit-ups. But now we're doing GHDs, we're doing double unders with a drag rope that the athletes really didn't get to practice with. And then we're adding a heavy barbell, 185 for the women, 275 for the men, and you have to clean it 5, 4, 3, and then 2, and finally 1 time after all that midline work.
Right, and it should be noted too that with the clean, it was ground to shoulder, so these athletes could squat clean it or they could power clean the barbell. So those that could power clean, obviously at this point, were at a huge advantage in this workout.
Kari Pearce needed to have a big performance here in order to get herself into the top 5. And she was competing with Kristen Holta. Of course, they didn't know what each other were doing, but Kari Pearce gets the best of this battle.
Right, Holta was barely holding on to that final qualifying position. She needed a big finish to make sure she could secure her spot. She got 11th place in this event with a time of 10:03. Like you said, Kari Pearce was kind of really making a push to take that position from Holta. She was just 10 points back. She finishes in 9:46, which was good for 8th. Was it enough to push Holta out of a qualifying position?
And it would be, as Kari Pearce winds up inside the top 5. Tia Toomey winds up running away with the competition. No shock there, and she caught up with Nicole Brazier after the entire thing was said and done.
This has been so different. You know, we saw you guys in your home gyms. We saw you alone with no fans. It was definitely an unusual competition. How do you think it was on the fairness scale?
Yeah, I think that because we were sent out professional judges, I think that definitely eased a lot of nerves and you know, any speculation that you had, even though there are videos, you just knew that because we had the judges present. And I know, going off my experiences with my judge and even Mat's judge, they were very particular on how they wanted things. They weighed everything. Oh, I don't even know how many times they had to weigh stuff. You know, they really took their job to the next level on making sure that there was that fairness there.
Wow. The programming was familiar but different, and it was fun to watch you guys take on events that we are also familiar with. What was it like for you when you saw the way that the programming was released across these 7 events?
Yeah, it was definitely different to what, well, I mean, I don't really know what to expect when it comes to Dave and his team and how they're going to program. You kind of have to expect anything and everything. And then when I seen the workouts and how they were done, I actually thought it was quite smart in terms of bringing the community together. You know, we've been through so much, not just globally, but within our sport of CrossFit. And the fact that we were able to utilize events that still challenged our fitness, still, you know, made sure that the right people were able to qualify into the next stage. We were able to incorporate the community and everything that, you know, really thrives off our sport and helps us grow as a brand and organization as well. And I also think that it was, you know, there's so much frustration and anger, you know, months and months ago, but then to bring this up and there's just so much positivity and, you know, we're really turning things around. And I think that's showing, and that programming somewhat reflected that. So, you know, I was really happy with it. Obviously, I am sitting on top, but I think that a lot of athletes will have to agree with me. And, you know, things that were so different, like the handstand hold, for example, I thought that maybe one day we'd see it, but it never came up. And then finally we have an opportunity to have something that's so different, but still a really great test. And, you know, people were able to showcase that. So I think that it was great.
We've seen in your videos from the events that your husband is there with you, and you've got Mat sometimes in the background cheering you on. I mean, how important is that very close-knit training environment that you have going on?
Oh, yeah, it's very special. You know, we're in a unique situation. And as much as I am an individual athlete, I have a team around me, and, you know, I really embrace my team. You know, they've had to sacrifice so much in order to help me get to where I am. And it's not even the people that are just there as well. It's people outside that are still living in Australia and stuff like that, you know, I owe so much to for their constant support. And, you know, just to have Shane there, you know, I don't know if he slept since the workout has been released, but the fact that he's had me and Matt, and he's been running around in circles, measuring, making sure that he's checking in with the judges and getting everything organized. It's so awesome. And I had to take a moment to sit back and just take it all in, because everything's going and happening so quickly, and with a blink of an eye, it's over. But just to see him in his element, and then, it is a very special thing to share with him.
I'm sure. Now, I know that you guys are all sort of one cohesive team, but I also know that you are a little competitive, both you and Matt. So between the two of you doing those events this weekend, who do you think won?
Unfortunately, going off the stats, Matt won. But, it's all right. I still have one more shot to hit him at the ranch. And, I'm going for all. I'm just going for it. Leave nothing in the tank. I can go on my off season, and as long as I pip him at the ranch, we'll be fine.
Cool. Cannot wait to see you out here for the finals. Congratulations again, Tia. We're going to send it back to Sean and Annie.
Tia Toomey finishes first. She is coming to the ranch in Aromas for part 2 of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games in October. Brooke Wells hangs on to second place. She was there for basically the entire competition. Haley Adams overtakes Katrin Davidsdottir. She'll take third. Davidsdottir is fourth, and Carrie Pierce, because of that performance in event 7, gets inside the top 5, and she rounds out the 5 women who will be coming here to the ranch in Aromas to compete the rest of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games. Let's go over to the men's side. Event 7, Samuel Quant and Jeffrey Adler able to take advantage of this and move themselves into the top 5 in a dramatic, exciting finish.
Right, because don't forget that in between both Samuel Quant and Jeffrey Adler were both Yona Koski and Chandler Smith. So going into this, Samuel Quant was in 14th place. He was 15 points up on both Smith and Koski, who were sharing that, I think it was 358 points at that point. He got a time of 9:41, 7th place, good enough to hold him in that qualifying position. Jeffrey Adler, on the other hand, was 7th going into this event. He was 6 points back from both Chandler Smith and Yanikoski. He gets a 9th place finish on this, 9:51. But what he needed, not was just that 9th place finish, he needed both Chandler Smith and Yanikoski to do worse than he did. And that's exactly what happened.
And here are your final results for Event 7. It all came down to this event for a couple of the guys. It didn't really matter for Mat Fraser because he was going to win this thing anyway. He won the event too, 8:46, the only man beneath 9 minutes. Brent Bukowski, his best finish by far of the competition, as he takes second with a time of 9:02. Jacob Hepner, Justin Medeiros, and Samuel Cornier rounding out the top 5. Vellner had a great performance, but he just runs out of time, can't get himself inside the top 5, and Samuel Quant's 7th place finish was enough to get him inside the top 5, as was Jeffrey Adler's 9th place. So your final standings for the men: Mat Fraser, 656 points, by far the winner, as Noah Olson didn't even get above 500. That's how big the margin of victory was for Fraser. Medeiros was solid all competition long. The mullet is coming to Aroma. Samuel Quant finishes 4th, and then Jeffrey Adler is able to leapfrog Yona Koski, get inside the top 5. He's coming to Aromas, and Chandler Smith is just 2 points out. And Nicole Brazier caught up with the 4-time CrossFit Games champion, Mat Fraser.
A new format, a different way of doing it. How did that affect you or change the game for you this time around?
It really doesn't change anything. We've had changed formats, we've had changed scoring systems, we've had cuts, no cuts, regional, sanctionals. I've been through just about all the different combinations you can ask for. It was nice as soon as they released, all right, it's going to be online, it's going to be 2 days. Yep. Here's the scoring system. It was a big sense of relief of, that's where all the stress comes from of just wondering what if. So yeah, once we had the rules and knew what to expect, that's what we started making our attack plan for.
When you saw the programming laid out and it was these twists and turns on, workouts that we all know and we've known and loved for a long time, what did you think in terms of how that would affect your performance?
It was definitely a bit of a curveball. There were some events that I was really nervous for. Something like a 1K row. you know, the heavier and bigger you are, the better it is for you. So events like that, I was really just hoping to hold my own and just do as best as I could. You know, something like the front squat. It was funny, before the event, I actually called it that Griffin would front squat 500, and then that Tyler Christoffel would front squat 450 plus.
Whoa.
So like those guys are going to beat me in the event. There's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is do the best that I can. And so the fact that I front squatted I think it was loaded at like 426 or something. You know, it's 20-pound PR for me. I can't ask for much more. It's a great day in the gym.
Yeah.
And so I'm just happy that the numbers held up.
Yep, totally. I mean, looking ahead, how fired up are you to continue this sort of different strategy, different format that we have this year, but get to the top 5 and get to Aromas?
Yeah, you know, the last 2 days really did get me fired up for the games. You know, this has been a long season. And, you know, I haven't competed since January. So, you know, it's been a lot of time just in the gym. And, you know, you get used to the flows of, you know, building a base and peaking, building a base and then peaking. This year, there hasn't been any of that. It's just been working on that foundation. So, you know, it was good. I haven't seen any of my competitors really. So it was good to go compete against them, see that the work I've been putting in has been working. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited for the next couple of weeks with Tia and Shane.
Yeah, I bet. And we are very excited to see you in the top 5 in the finals in just a couple of weeks. Mat, thank you so much for weighing in on how these last couple of days have gone for you. And congratulations again on your big win here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Part 2, the in-person competition of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games starts on October 19th, goes through October 25th. Can't wait to get that going. That's going to do it for us here on the Road to the Ranch recap show. For Andy Sakamoto, I'm Sean Woodland, and we will see you in Aromas.